Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. This one we're going to be taking a look inside my first ever reading journal from 2025. She's looking pretty chunky by the looks of it, so I say I've done a good job of using it and loving it very well. So here's my very simple but very on theme cover page. And then here is my physical TBR, so everything that I physically own in a book, and I'll go in and color in whichever books I have read off of my physical TBR. And here is my growing TBR, so all the books that I would like to read that I do not physically own, and I kind of gave up on it since my list of growing books that I wanted to read was just getting so extensive, and it was just easier to keep track of it all by favoriting them on Amazon. And then here is my bookshelf of all the books I've read in 2025, which are color-coded by which month I read them in. Then on the next page is all the books that I have bought in 2025, which this list continues on to the next page. I'm scared to add up all these numbers, and I don't think I ever will because I don't want to know what the end result number is. We can just conclude that I bought a lot. And then here on this side we have my year in pixels with my gradient color-coded page number system. And now looking back at this, there's a lot of missed days for reading. Then on this side is my 50 books book goal, which as you can see, I completed just over halfway. I'm learning that a 30 book goal might be better suited for me for this year. So this page I have a more in-depth look at how many exact pages I read each day, just for fun. And I just like to know these kind of things. Over here we have my anticipated releases pages, which I utilized for the most part up until about the last couple of months of the year, and I kind of just forgot about it and gave up on it. It became too much of a hassle to keep up with everything that was being released that I wanted to read. Now this spread has to be my favorite beginning of the year spread. So here we have my 25 books I wanted to read in 2025, and I did a pretty great job reading all the ones that I wanted to read. And then on this side we have my top 10 books of 2025, which is The Floating World, The Scorpion and the Night Blossom, The Rose Bargain, The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, and all the other ones below. I just listed my top 4 favorites, and I ranked them all up against this ranking system. And then here is just a blank page. I left it blank because I thought I was forgetting a spread that I wanted to do, so obviously I didn't have any more ideas, so it just stayed blank. And so here we are at January. I only ended up reading one book, which was Light Lark. It was one of the worst reading months of the year. As you can see, I was still carrying over a book from the previous year that I had been pretty much trying to finish reading since November. So yeah, I don't even want to talk about this anymore. As we move on to February, it was probably just as bad as January. Light Lark severely carried over into February, but at least I still managed to finish Nightbane in February, and it didn't get carried over into March. And here I'm just kind of pointing out the obvious of pages read, genres read, how I read the book, how many books I bought, all that kind of fun stuff. Alright, March, things picked up a little bit for me here. We read 3 books, 1,175 pages, and only bought 5 books. And then I finished what was out for the Light Lark series and moved into the Caraval series. I read all of this in a physical format, and it was all fantasy related. So here's my review for Sky Shade, Caraval, and Legendary. I kind of don't like how these turned out, but what can you do? Alright, so moving on to April, we finally decided to do a full page spread for the cover page. I read 2 books, which only came out to 830 pages, and I ended up buying 8 books this month. It was a 50-50 split between fantasy and romance, but it was all read in a physical copy. And here you can see I finished up the Caraval series and moved into a fun little romance novel. Here's my review on Finale. I give it a 4 stars initially, but now I'm kind of thinking the rating should be less. And again, I don't really like the way this spread came out. Moving on to the Summer of Broken Rules review, again with another 4-star rating. And this is like the first spread that I have done all year that is my favorite so far. And now here we have May's setup. I really love this theme that I did, and I wish I carried it more over into the calendar side. This month we read 2 books, which came out to 842 pages, and I bought 5 books, 50-50 split on fantasy and romance, and it was all read in a physical copy. So here is my review spread for Beach Read. It was pretty cute. I like how this came out. And then here we have my Rose Bargain spread that I absolutely love so much. This one topped the Summer of Broken Rules one by a long shot. And here's where I started experimenting with writing while I was reading, and it kind of was pretty fun. I pretty much was just writing down what I was thinking or feeling in certain moments when they occurred. And now for the best reading month of the entire year, June. I read a total of 5 books, which came out to 1,810 pages. Only bought 6 books, all read in physical copy aside from that little tiny sliver that I used for audio when we were in the car, and it was all 100% fantasy. I read the entire Powerless trilogy on top of another completely different book. And now this spread had become my favorite one so far. The colors and vibe just screamed summer. And here is my Powerless review spread. I am absolutely in love with this specific artwork by Lotus Bubble. And then here is my reading dump. Oh, just ignore that random writing. I probably should erase it, but I'm probably never gonna go back and fix it. Then here's my Powerful review. I didn't really have much of a reading dump since this was a novella, so I kind of kept everything to just 1 page. Then we move on to my Reckless review. It's not my favorite spread, so I'm just gonna move on with it. And then here is the reading dump for Reckless, and I included some extra fan art that I didn't have any room for in other spreads. Over here I had some marker bleeding since I had this outside and it started raining, and I ended up closing the book, and then the colors kind of just spread and bled onto each other. Then here is my Fearless review, kind of keeping the same setup theme going on throughout the reviews. I initially reviewed this book as a 5-star, then I bumped it up to a 6-star, and now I'm kind of thinking it should just stay at a 5 stars. And then here is my reading dump for it, which spanned onto 2 pages. I had a lot to say about this book as I was reading. And then here on this side, I had so many favorite quotes that I couldn't fit on the spread, so I kind of just dumped them in here since I had an extra page. Moving on to the Voice of the Ocean review. Unfortunately, there's only 1 piece of fan art out there for this book, and this piece of artwork is done by Frostbite Studios, our queen of amazing bookish artwork. This took me months to come in here and do a review on it. and then of course the matching reading dump for the book. And I actually really love how this reading dump came out. And now moving on to the month of straight up Asian fantasy. Can you tell this spread was heavily inspired by the song Soda Pop from K-pop Demon Hunters? Well, now you know. I ended up reading only 4 books this month, which still came out to 1,632 pages, and somehow I managed to purchase 12 books this month. I'm not entirely sure what was going on this month. These were all read in a physical format, with the majority of them being fantasy, more specifically Asian fantasy, while that little 25% was a romance novel. The Scorpion and the Night Blossom spread, oh my gosh, this may be one of my favorite spreads ever. And I love this book so much so that I got the Fairy Loot Special Edition, which, let me just show you, looks like this. Now I have a grievance. Fairy Loot released book 2 to this duology, I believe is what it is, on the 10th or 11th of February. Tell me why 2 days later I go to purchase the 2nd edition and it's completely out of stock. Like, what do you mean there's no more stock available when it's a pre-order? Fairy Loot, I am begging you, please allow me to buy a copy. Please. Anyways, I really needed to get that off my chest. So as you can tell, I had a lot to say about this book in my reading dump, and I had a lot of favorite quotes that would not fit on the page. I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. And it was the perfect thing I was craving after watching K-pop Demon Hunters. Now, I did a little oopsies here. I forgot to set aside a page for the review for this, so we'll come back to it. And for now, we'll move on to the Floating World, which I am also heavily in love with how this spread came out. It is competing with the Scorpion and the Night Blossom, and once again was an amazing book that I will not shut up about. It was so good that my reading dump ended up going onto the 2nd page. Now, once again, I forgot to leave a space for a review for the Nightblood Prince, and I don't remember having this much to say about it because it went onto the 2nd page once again. But alas, we just did our review on the next page. I really do like the way this came out. There's something slightly off about it that I'm not entirely sure what it is, but overall, she's pretty cute. Now, here is that review page for Just for the Summer. That's all the way at the very end. I low-key absolutely despise the way this spread came out. I don't like it at all, so I'm just gonna move on because I don't want to look at this any longer. Alright, August. Here we read 3 books, which came out to 1,149 pages. Only bought 3 books, which I think also included my 2 book box subscriptions. And if my math is mathing, 65% of this was fantasy and 35% was romance, all in physical copy. And we read The Love Hypothesis, The Tales of Arcana Fortune, and The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. Now, I know The Love Hypothesis is pretty popular, but unfortunately it was just an okay read. There wasn't anything really too special about it. And then of course here's the reading dump for it. And now we move on to the Tales of Arcana Fortune spread. Now, if you guys would have seen my reading journal update video, you would have seen that I had some grievances with this author, but aside from that, I really did enjoy the concept of this book, and it was pretty good. Very whimsical and, dare I say, cozy. And then here we have the reading dump for this book, which I guess I didn't have that much to say about it. Moving on to the Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. I am absolutely in love with the color scheme of this spread. I love the pink, I love the blue, so beautiful. And then of course my reading dump space, which unfortunately I didn't write a lot about this book. My head wasn't fully immersed into the story for some reason during this time, so that I didn't have much to really dive deep into. And now we're at my favorite spread I have ever set up in this entire reading journal. Technically, I didn't even really finish a single book, but I counted it towards this month anyways. I read only 165 pages of that book and then proceeded to purchase 9 books that entire month. It was all 100% sci-fi fantasy, I think, and it was all read in a physical form. Now, something you guys should know about the Renegade series is that this is my second time reading this series. The first time I ever read it was back in middle school when the series was first being written and released. It had been so long since I last read it that I wanted to dive back into the world. Now we move on to October, which once again I barely even managed to read a single book, which did come out to 546 pages and still ended up buying 7 books this month. It was all 100% sci-fi fantasy, assuming that's what the Renegade series is categorized as, and it was all in a physical copy. I feel like the Renegade series is heavily underrated, like nobody even knows this book series exists except for a select few people, and it's devastating. I beg of you to please read this series because it is absolutely amazing. I know my reading dump may not reflect that, but trust me, it is really good. I was just going through a really rough reading slump. Alright, November. Things picked up a little bit here. We managed to read 2 books, which came out to 996 pages. I bought 5 books, and of the 2 books that I read, half of it was sci-fi fantasy, and the other half was dark academia, gothic, romantasy, and they were all read as a physical copy. Now, Supernova is a special case. I've read this book now 4 times. Can you tell which one I love the most out of the 3 books? But granted, I've also owned this specific copy since middle school, and I only just recently purchased the first 2 books in the series last year. Supernova was my entertainment for when I got my phone taken away. Now for 7 Deadly Thorns, I too am also very much in love with the color scheme and the way this entire spread came out. And this book was a very new genre to me. I've never really read anything gothic before, though I don't like anything really school related. I've been tortured enough in school that I don't even want to read about characters in a school. Now, as you can see, we've reached the very end of this reading journal. I guess I did read a lot in 2025 despite having lots of reading slumps. So now we have to move into my overflow reading journal for the December spreads. I'm very satisfied knowing that I managed to finish my 2025 reading journal, and I finished it early. Now, opening up this overflow journal, we are greeted with the cover page that I did for it, and then flipping over, we are greeted with our December page. Now, just a little moment for the chromatic stickers that are on this page. Ooh, they're so cute. Now, I made a little mistake when I was doing the genre pie chart. It should be 50% fantasy and 50% romance. I accidentally added in 7 Deadly Thorns into this, since reading it did bleed into December a little bit. But other than that, we read 2 books, which came out to 836 pages, and then I bought 7 books. Now, moving on to the Good Spirits review. I actually really enjoyed this romance novel. Normally they're all the same story, just with the different characters and slightly different plot, but this one was so different. It had a little bit of a fantasy element to it, and I think that's why I really liked this one. Now moving on to the last and final review spread for Spectacular. Granted, this is a novella, so I didn't have much to say about it review-wise and reading dump-wise, so that's why it only has a half-page review. Alright, and that concludes my final 2025 reading journal flip through. I hope you guys enjoyed taking a look inside my reading journal. It was certainly super fun doing this, as this was my first time ever keeping a reading journal, and I very much will be continuing doing this in 2026, which is already here, and I've already started using my current new reading journal. If you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to stick around for more journaling and bookish content in the near future.